In 2020, studies from Europe, North America, and Oceania all found that the incidence of celiac disease has been rising significantly since the second half of the 20th century. Canada has seen notable increases, with some reports describing it as having among the highest rises in incidence prevalence over recent decades. In a 2024 survey and impact update, Celiac Canada reported that rates have doubled in the past 25 years, with ongoing challenges in diagnosis and management. Clearly, this is a growing health issue that needs to be addressed with more education and awareness. So, to help us do just that, our guest today is Melissa Secord, who has been the National Executive Director of Celiac Canada for nearly a decade and is actively involved in advocacy, research, promotion, and public communications. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So, before we talk about Celiac Canada, could you explain in simple terms what is celiac disease and how it differs from a wheat allergy or gluten sensitivity?
Well, there is certainly a lot of confusion, and we hear a lot of people say, oh, gluten bothers me, and then they don't quite know what it is. So, celiac disease is a chronic autoimmune condition. So, you basically need to have the genes first to get celiac disease, but it can strike at any time of life. You can be a young infant, teen, middle aged. Even we've had people as late as 100 get diagnosed. And what
Really?
happens is yes, yes. So, and it's not a one and done, diagnosis. You can be pre-celiac, your body could be sort of inherently susceptible, so it could trip on, and it's usually a
Mm.
perfect storm that comes together. And what can cause it is the genes. Something that's happened near in your gut biome, they're doing a lot of research there. Often, maybe a adverse condition could be food poisoning, childbirth, could be menopause. It can be all sorts of different things that kind of trigger. It's like an environmental condition stressor on the body, and it can basically switch on the gene, and then you start to react to gluten. And so, gluten is a protein found in wheat, rye, barley, and then we say contaminated oats because oats naturally
Mm.
are gluten free, but they're often harvested, produced alongside wheat, and so we tell people that they need to eat gluten-free oats in that condition. So wheat is a wheat allergy is normally people can grow out of it by the adulthood, but it's basically the wheat protein. So there's a wheat protein and the gluten protein, and so people are reacting to the wheat protein, and it's more like a peanut allergy where it's an anaphylaxis. It's short term, can be very life threatening immediately, but there's no long-term damage.
Mm.
Where celiac disease, it's a chronic exposure, can create systemic long-term conditions, and it creates damage in your villi. Basically, your it's like your fingers are like your villi in your body, and when you have healthy villi, they're nice and long like fingers. But once they get damaged by the gluten, they basically shrink, and all the nutrients, all that healthy stuff that you consume just goes scooting on by and don't get absorbed into the body, and it creates a
Wow.
chain reaction of chronic conditions, which we can talk about.
So, how many symptoms are associated with celiac disease, and why can it be so difficult to diagnose, including the stat on undiagnosed cases?
Yeah, we believe about 75 to 85% of people are undiagnosed. A lot of people are self-diagnosed, so it is important. But there's over 200 symptoms. It's really, we call it a
Wow.
chameleon. It's the clinical chameleon. Autoimmune conditions are often like that. So you can have from tummy, gut, diarrhea, you can have constipation, you can have a lot of extreme weight loss, but then you can also be extremely tired
Mm.
through anemia, bone joint conditions, migraines, neurological damage, people have
Wow.
that brain fog, and it can be gluten. And there is a difference between, you know, um, yeah, that celiac disease. And some people say, oh, I think I have gluten sensitivity. And we actually think that people may be reacting to maybe a different set of proteins, which are FODMAPs. So it is important to get a diagnosis first before you start not consuming gluten, because actually in order
Yeah.
to get tested, you need to be consuming gluten right now,
Right.
There is some research to change that, we hope, but
Yes.
basically you need to be need to be eating the thing that makes you really upset.
Welcome back. I'm speaking with Melissa Secord from Celiac Canada, and we're talking about celiac disease. So, what are examples of less obvious or atypical symptoms in adults, such as those affecting energy, mood, skin, bones, or fertility? You were touching on some of that.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that anemia, so iron
Mm,
deficiency, is one of the leading actually symptoms of people not yet diagnosed with celiac disease.
interesting.
About 68%. So those are typical. A lot
68%,
of people
that's
go.
very high. That's very high.
It is. It's almost like an epidemic, and a lot of people go to their doctor and say, "Oh, I'm really tired. I can barely make it up the stairs." And we hear a lot of that from people, or kids are sleeping in class and they're not performing well. And they'll start saying, "Oh, you're not getting enough iron. Okay, let's get you on supplements." And then that doesn't work. And then they get into iron infusions and all sorts of things. Or with women, they certainly worry about their periods and
Hmm.
flow and things like that. Um, but often they're not checking for celiac disease, and it's because,
Mm.
as mentioned about those villi, the iron just doesn't get absorbed into the body, and then they get deficient. And there are long-term consequences for being iron deficient. So we really want doctors, family doctors, primary care to screen for celiac disease, especially when people present with iron deficiencies.
So,
Joint pain,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead. Joint pain. Let's
because
talk about that.
yeah, so my sister was diagnosed, and one of the things that she was complaining about is chronic joint pain. And again, it's just the inflammatory response that celiac disease has on the body. And she found, after she was diagnosed, got properly gluten-free, like within 2 weeks her joint pain was like 50% resolved. It's
Wow.
pretty incredible. And of course, long-term conditions like osteoporosis, osteopenia,
Mhm.
are when, again, calcium's not getting absorbed. A lot of people go, "Yeah, I'm really lactose intolerant," and that's actually could be the underlying indication of celiac disease. And once people,
Huh.
again, get diagnosed and get on a proper diet, um, often those conditions resolve, because your villi actually is so resilient, it does grow back, and then you start absorbing calcium again and all those nutrients. Once you get diagnosed, people can live a relatively long, healthy life, just as long as they understand the diet.
So I want to talk here for a moment. How do symptoms often present differently in children compared to adults? And why is it important to recognize silent or asymptomatic cases?
So children often are pretty classic in, when if celiac disease does sort of turn on when they're early in life, uh, it is like distended tummies. Like, it's pretty kind of classic. They fail to thrive. They're short. Like, they just don't grow at the rate of their peers, and
Mm.
that's a classic symptom. Again, sometimes they're very gaunt in the eyes. They may be losing weight rapidly, and we've heard some just horrific stories of children being hospitalized and like parents sort of saying goodbye to their child because
Ah.
no one knows that celiac disease. So a lot of people go, "Oh, it's just a little bread, little crumbs." No, it is a serious autoimmune
Yeah.
condition you have to take seriously. So kids are kind of classic that way. But silent celiac, or maybe it's called micro asymptomatic. There's often people don't realize the symptoms they're having are actually celiac disease, but there are
Mm.
a portion of people who just don't feel anything, and that's the
Mm.
scary part because they don't know when they're getting we
Exactly.
say gluten, contaminated, and so then the damage is happening in their body, and long term, there are some serious consequences. There's neurological damage, uh, cancer, threats, osteopenia, which makes your bones very brittle,
Mm.
obviously the anemia portion, so it really is important to get diagnosed as early as possible, but it can take about up to 10 years, our studies say, just because it's just
Wow,
such a chameleon, it's hard to diagnose. So we want doctors to be more aware of it
for
and be
sure.
more proactive.
We have less than a minute here, but I just want to say Celiac Canada was originally Canadian Celiac Association. So we just want like a 45-second history on how it started.
Basically, two women, one with a son with celiac disease and one with a lady what was used to be called celiac sprue, happened to have a chance meeting and said, "We've got this condition. There's not a group here to help support us." So they got together and started Celiac Canada on a wintry day in Kitchener Waterloo and had the first meeting. And then it blossomed with chapters across Canada and into a national organization that is trying to find, treat, and cure celiac disease.
Man, I'm so glad they did. When we come back, we'll discuss the role Celiac Canada plays today. Stay with us. With celiac disease on the rise, finding a community for support and education is crucial. Melissa, what exactly is Celiac Canada's core mission and vision? And how does it focus on helping people live safely with celiac disease?
In a nutshell, we're here to see, a world without celiac disease, and we want to find, treat, cure celiac disease. So, first, we want to find people who think gluten's a problem, get diagnosed, and then get referred to us. And then the treating part is basically getting on a gluten free diet. So, right now, the
Mm.
only treatment is a strict gluten free
It's just
diet
stay
for
away
life.
from it.
Yeah, and it's a little bit trickier than people think.
It
So, we
really is.
provide, thanks to our scientific advisory group, our dietitians working group, resources, science based resources, and education. We provide free webinars, free materials, newly diagnosed programs, seniors and aging,
Wow.
education. We offer online conferences. We do a monthly gluten free 101 if you want to learn about, how to manage the diet with a registered dietitian. So, and they're all free and thanks to our generous donors. So, that's in a nutshell for the programs. We also advocate on behalf of this growing, community that impacts 1% of Canada's population is at risk. So we're always fighting for food labeling because it's all about the
Mm,
diet. It's all about gluten free and making sure that gluten free products are available, which is incredible now. There's so many great options now for
there
gluten
really
free.
are,
We
yeah.
just need to make sure that they're safe and produced in a certified environment or make sure the ingredients are safe, but also advocating for affordability, just to make the life better for people living with a disease. And of course, we want to find a cure.
Yes, definitely. So you've covered a lot there. So that's probably a lot of what your role is. But specifically as the national executive director of Celiac Canada, what do you feel is specifically your role?
I'm just basically the steward, the flagship, the speaker, helping people be more aware of celiac disease. I'm out, meeting government stakeholders. We're collaborating with other groups that are allied. Celiac disease, because it's autoimmune, there's connection to type 1 diabetes, to
Oh,
osteoporosis. So we often extend out to other healthcare charities through alliances, and that's a lot of my work as well as the advocating on Parliament Hill. So it's really an honor to represent this, small but mighty growing community, to raise awareness of this important disease that we all need to know about.
well, let's talk about that. Celiac Canada's recent advocacy efforts, such as petitions for affordable gluten free food or policy changes or international involvement. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so it's important for us to just always have our eye on, different levels. Obviously the disease is local, so we have our wonderful chapters that support us locally, but we're advocating federally for changes to the medical expense tax credit so people
Okay.
can claim for the difference, the cost in gluten-free. Gluten-free food is it's 150 to 500% more than regular products. It's because they're made with, specialty food, specialty
Mhm.
ingredients. It's not as, widespread made as things, flour made of wheat. So there, because it is a medical condition, there is a gap, but the government has made it incredibly difficult for people to claim. So we're fighting to cut the red tape to make it simpler because they already have a high burden.
Mhm.
Every day they have to watch what they eat for the rest of their lives, but
Right.
we want them to be able to claim it in a more simple way, and we do, support food insecurity through Save Me for Gluten Free. We try to help work with food banks to make people who have to access their food through food banks easier. It's very difficult. We have a vulnerable community within a vulnerable community. And we also advocate for just better regulations to make it, again, easier for those products to become available across Canada and the globe. And then internationally, we're working together, collaborating with our
Oh,
other patient allies to help bring, again, safer labeling, easier to read labeling so people can easily identify gluten-free food.
So we have about 40 seconds left here, but I say so would that be what the local chapters do across the country then? They help people in their area with any education or are they able to come in person or where would they receive this information with the local chapters? 20
So
seconds.
we have 10 yeah, we have 10 chapters across Canada, and it's really sort of it's grocery store tours. It's living in that
Mm.
community with the disease, where to eat safely in their restaurants, who the healthcare professionals and working with their local schools. And then we look after more the national umbrella through our Facebook group online, and we connect with about 35,000 people right now online are giving support to each other.
Navigating what food is safe to eat as a person suffering with celiac disease can be overwhelming. Awareness is key to help prevent exposure to gluten. So, okay, so Melissa, what key awareness and education programs does Celiac Canada run, such as workshops, online resources, or community events? I know you mentioned some, but let's quickly go through them again so that our viewers can keep that in mind and when they're reaching out to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways if people are just curious about learning about celiac disease. So they can join one of our monthly webinars visiting celiac.ca. You can, take our gluten-free 101 or specialty webinars. If you're more sophisticated with the disease, we have a national scientific conference online in the fall. We also have a help desk run by some experienced volunteers. So if people just are newly diagnosed and they just need a lifeline, we're often seen as a
Yeah.
lifeline for people, they can call or email and they'll get a response from one of our trained volunteers. And then we also have our Facebook group where people can have a safe community where they can ask questions, pour their hearts out, get latest product buys and advice. Local restaurants they can do that, or they can join one of our local chapters across Canada and get some more localized advice, really living with the disease. So we really have a lot of ways. And plus, we've got newsletters and a magazine, and people can sign up and get information even that way. So lots of variety. May is Celiac Awareness Month, so people will hopefully see
Okay.
some of our outreach about with our chameleon and learn a little bit more about celiac disease.
Now, in past shows, I've talked about food sensitivities and holidays and what it can be like for a person dealing with that, and I am one of them. So let's ask. I want to ask the question: how does the organization help deal with the stigma that many times comes along with having something like this to improve diagnosis rates and support research toward better treatments and care?
Well, we often have guides that we put out. So it's like traveling gluten free. We put out a brand new traveling
Mm.
gluten free because travel is super important for people. They want to get out, but how do they navigate trains,
It's
planes,
it's
global
scary.
travel?
It's very scary.
It
I go
is.
hungry a lot, and I'm half my suitcase is food most of the time.
Snacks. Yeah. So we provide those kind of tips through holiday guides and again through some of those specialty webinars because there are those living situations. The minute you go out of your home and you're
Mm.
relying on someone else to feed you, that's scary. And we do a lot of advocacy and we're going to do more on long-term care and assisted living because
Mm,
again, it's when you're vulnerable or you're in your hospital. So we're trying to like educate food service, hospitals because you don't necessarily get a gluten-free diet
no,
safely. So through our education, we're trying to address those problems. When you're dining out and you don't can't control your environment, we teach them how to ask a lot of different probing questions. But what if you are not in a situation where you can ask those questions? So
right.
we're trying to then advocate for the caregivers as well as the people who provide the care.
I do find that a lot of people in restaurants are very helpful now, and I've even had a waiter come with the binder from the kitchen to show me exactly what is in it, so I could see for myself, and I really appreciate that, and I do see that happening more and more where restaurants are trying to be proactive, so that is very helpful.
Yeah, I think celiac is having its moment. It's not just a gluten-free fad diet and
Mhm.
that the celebrities have. A lot of understanding now is that it is a serious condition and people are being more respectful. We do hear
Mm.
sometimes people having problems with people going, "Oh, come on, just eat it,
Yeah.
make your mom happy."
Yeah.
And so we still have some of those stigmas to break down, but through the support of the community, we try and offer those tips through some public awareness and through some education and training.
Okay, we have 30 seconds left. What message of hope and encouragement would you like to offer anyone struggling with celiac disease today?
Well, I'd say if you're struggling and don't know maybe what's causing your problem, I would definitely say get checked for celiac disease. We have a wonderful symptom checker on our website where people can see if it's celiac disease. Don't stop eating gluten. It's a simple blood test to get you started, and you can order that through your family doctor. But for celiac disease, you do have hope in that you have a wonderful community with Celiac Canada there to support you through free resources and assistance. More than ever now, there are companies and pharmacies and scientists looking at celiac disease to find maybe a cure or an adjunct
Mhm.
therapy because I know people just want to eat like a regular
Yes,
burger or donut or whatever or
or
cereal.
chocolate cake.
Um, exactly.
Yes.
So, you know, work is progressing and there is hope that down that pathway.
Thanks for watching. I'm Julie Stoutland.